Hello and welcome to the Matt Chambers Show, connecting people, places, and ideas. I'm your host, Matt Chambers. This is the podcast about living, traveling, and doing business internationally. Each week, we bring you inspiring stories and actionable insights to help you create a life beyond borders. Tune in and turn your dreams into reality. Why don't you share a little bit about your background and how you got started in the real estate space? I know that you also started Quatro Legal, right?
Yeah. Interesting. I've been a lawyer for almost 20 years. And I got started into this because I thought that it was a good way to do business and pretty much, get knowledge so that I could do a lot of things. And so I started to work. Basically, my background is litigation arbitration, which led to investment and real estate related litigation arbitration. So when I was in the early 2000s, when I was going to law school, I used to work and see a lot of cases of developments and real estate transactions that did not necessarily were doing okay. And then the 2008 recession came, and I was a young lawyer. And then I started to see a lot of the real estate law firms in the country that had clients that got into trouble. So it gave me a really good perspective of what goes wrong in a real estate transaction. And I had a lot of practice doing that and overseeing things. And then when I started to work at a law firm, a lot of the contracts, a lot of the things that I was seeing from my litigation arbitration position were real estate related. Then I guess it was easy to pretty much transition to transactional real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I opened my firm in 2015. One of the things that I decided to do was trying to make sure that I made the best use of my skills because, we were only four people at the office at that time. And so I decided to give it a shot at starting with the real estate transactions. And I started to meet some real estate agents in Costa Rica. The real estate practice in Costa Rica, it's a little bit more informal that you would find it in the United States and in Canada. So what I realized is that a lot of the things that I could help was actually, providing some structure and some uh, rational thinking to contracts and things like that, to the point where I started to tell real estate agents, hey, maybe don't get too much involved in drafting the contract. Make sure that you can actually get a buyer and a seller to agree on terms, and I'll take it over from that. And I think that just was a concept that I started to use a lot to start meeting people. Because at that time, I nobody really knew who I was. I was always working in court and doing things like that,
Mm-hmm.
and that actually worked. Providing support to real estate agents and real estate companies was a good way to get people to know who I was, and it created a lot of relationships. And I think that investing in any sector, and especially in the real estate market in Costa Rica, is about the relationships that you have and the people that you know, and making sure that you take care of the people that work in the market. And then that translated into clients. Clients were looking to somebody that could, that they could have a good conversation in English, that had the ability to explain the things that they needed to know, because it's a little different doing real estate here in Costa Rica than it is in the United States and Canada. And I think that referrals were the way that I started to practice in this market. And then my firm just took off, and we do really well in the real estate market today. But it has been a very interesting experience.
Yeah, real estate in Costa Rica has been incredible. I mean, Americans and Canadians for 20, 30 years have been investing. I mean, maybe even longer than that, have been investing in Costa Rica. And I've talked to so many guys along the way that just made a ton of money uh, investing down there. I assume it's probably the same, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that in that perspective, Canadians and United States citizens are our biggest clientele, I would say.
Yeah.
And I think that it is because clearly the weather in some areas in the United States gets very, very cold.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to get on a plane, hop down, come for a few hours to Costa Rica. And it is a very good place for them to come for many different reasons that we can talk about. But it has been a great place for people to come and invest. And as you say, there's a lot of people that have been very, very successful, investing and developing projects and having that North American mindset to business that sometimes in Costa Rica was missing because, as you said, maybe this is a market that has grown and exploded in the last 30 years. And it was people that I think had a lot of vision, the ones that came a few decades ago, because they're beaches that you go now and they're fully developed. But at that time, there was nothing there. So I think there's a good combination of Costa Rica presenting itself with a set of characteristics that make it very attractive, and a lot of vision that people that came and started to buy jungles basically and places that did not have the infrastructure, and then they work with communities to put that in place.
What are those things that you think make Costa Rica attractive for foreigners?
Well, I would say that number one is the concept and the knowledge that Costa Rica has an incredible biodiversity. I think that we have 5% of the world's biodiversity in a very, very small country. And the other thing is that it's a very friendly country because of language. A lot of people speak English, so when you come from abroad, you're not totally lost when you come down. Then the ability to get on a plane, and from Florida it's a couple of hours. Even if you fly from California, it's going to be a 6 hour flight. So I think those conditions make it easy. I think the government has done a good job in creating relationships with airlines so that there's a decent amount of flights that come from Canada and the United States. So that makes it accessible. And I think that Costa Rica has one or two things that would make it very different from Latin America. And it is our education system is great. The 97 to 99% of the people go to high school and get a degree. And then the healthcare system is something that's universal. So that plays a very good role to have a big middle class, and people that have the conditions and the stability to work, to become professionals and things like that. So there's a mixture there of economic and social factors that actually make Costa Rica very, very different from our neighbor's country, whether Panama, that has an incredible financial growth, or Nicaragua, or even other places in South America. So I think that is really what Costa Rica has become as a place that separates itself from Latin America. And then people start to come to the country, and it's a small country, so you can get a car and maybe in a week see the whole country and see different beaches in different places, go to the mountains, come to the city, have access to good restaurants and things like that. So I think that it's just a very small place that has a great set of conditions to push development, favor investment, and most importantly, favor tourism. That it's what we are known for.
And speaking of that, what regions are you seeing the most growth in the real estate sector?
No, it's that's something that we try to keep an ear and an eye on what's going on in the market. Because Costa Rica, even though it is a small place, it has many, many different places that have different things to offer, right? So I would say the strongest place for an investor to come and to travel, it's probably going to be the north part of the country. That it's what we call Guanacaste. That's a province. Guanacaste has a very large extension. So there's a lot of beaches like Tamarindo, Flamingo, Las Catalinas, that have been for many decades, spots that people actually love to come, because it has incredible beaches, but also it has restaurants, hotels, hospitals, things like that make it friendly for someone coming for the first time, or just passing by. There are new places that have grown, and have grown basically because of the investment, on foreign investment that has been done, like Santa Teresa and Nosara. Santa Teresa is in Punta Arenas, and Nosara is in Guanacaste as well. Those places for me are like independent counties, and people go and invest, and they have a strong sense of community, and you see really, really nice constructions and projects in those areas. And then there's always places like the Central Pacific, that it's the main area that you would see there is Jaco.
Ah,
And the reason why Jaco is so very well known and so visited is because it's maybe an hour and 30 minutes from the capital, from San Jose. So it's very common that foreigners will come, fly down through San Jose, and then go to the Central or South Pacific, and they always go through Jaco because it has a lot of hotels, and it has a lot of restaurants, and it has a lot of things. And nowadays, you're seeing places going down to the South Pacific, in Quepos, Manuel Antonio, that it's the most visited part of the country, and towns that were maybe 5, 10 years ago isolated. Now they have started to welcome investors with a different taste of what they would find in the north part of the country. I would say that from Uvita, Ojochal, Golfito, those areas are going to continue to grow, and I think that's where the movement is going to go next.
are they the best places? I guess. It would, are they the least expensive places to get in? So if you were coming down there, you just wanted to buy a, you just wanted to
I
dip your
yeah,
toe in the
I
water,
Yeah, I think that there's places that have accrued a lot of value, and maybe the price to enter it's a little high. For example, you go to the north in Flamingo and Tamarindo, in that area, there's a lot of things that have already been priced in.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to the South Pacific, that will give you a different um, price range and perspective because of the development. But same as you see entry level lots, if you want to just get your first property in Costa Rica, there's very big houses that are built in the mountains, and those are going to be as pricey as anywhere else in the country. But I think, as I always tell investors and my clients and expats that I meet, Costa Rica has a large number of properties for you to be able to get a good idea of what the market has to offer, and that you can actually look for something that's right for you. Whenever I'm starting my lawyer speech into how to buy real estate in Costa Rica, I always tell them, listen, it's about the property. So let's not even get tied up in the details of how to buy property. Go have fun, visit as many places as you can, work with a knowledgeable real estate agent that has a lot of listings, network connections, and they can show you as much as they can, because if you start to look, you'll find something that's for you, either if it's in the city, in a mountain, or at the beach. And I always say that the most important part of buying real estate in Costa Rica is to do your due diligence, have fun, visit as many places, and then select a few options that you can actually put an offer and take it from there. But yeah, it's a very rich market from an offer perspective.
And you guys have your own real estate agents that they could reach out to?
Yes, because of conflict of interest, we don't get involved in the brokering of properties because we're lawyers, and so we cannot have a connection with the buyer or the seller from a perspective of that. But we have over the last 9.5 years created relationships with many real estate agents, many real estate companies that operate throughout all the country. So I ask the clients, hey, or the investors, where do you want to see properties, and I'll give them a few names so that they can interview. Because in the end, whenever you're buying in a foreign country, you have to have a few set of people that you can trust.
Absolutely.
And so I always refer them to real estate agents or firms, depending on location, that I know that they're going to be taking care of them and being treated in a professional and transparent manner. The one thing that I tell everybody is that when you get off the plane and you get a taxi, that taxi driver is going to try to make a sale. And then so you got to be careful with that, because the ticos were very friendly, were very put out in the spirit, and a lot of people make mistakes because they find the wrong people at the right time,
They
and
trust too
and that's how
quickly.
exactly, and that's probably what I am always super jealous about. Taking care of the clients and making sure that they always have the information and that they can refer. They are referred to somebody that is going to be taking care of them, versus just using the taxi driver or the
Mhm.
guy that helps them with traveling or things like that. So, but yeah, there's an incredible set of networks of people that have tended to our clients for many, many years, and those are the people that we normally refer our clients to.
I've always said that when you move to Latin America, when a gringo moves to Latin America, it takes somewhere between 3 and 5 years to build that network of people that you can actually trust to get done what you need to get done. And most guys go through several and end up banged up and bruised quite a bit because of the people that they trust in the beginning. And that's one of the major points of this platform was to take that 5 years and reduce it down for people. Just to, all you have to do now is listen to my listen to my platform, because the idea behind it and the reason that you and I are talking is, because I want to put trustworthy people on the platform that people can confide in, and reduce that
No,
5 year period to nothing.
yeah, what you say, it's absolutely true. It takes time to know, to get to know people that are trustworthy, and that because in that 3 to 5 year, you tend to have experiences that are in the negative side. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to start over. So what we have done here at the firm is that we have created a set of networks. So jokingly, but not, I always tell clients I always know a guy, right?
Yep.
So if you need anything, just text me, give me a call, and I'll let you know what I think that you should do. I'll give you a list of people that you can reach out, from architects, engineers, doctors, builders, you name it. I know somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I learned from from previous work experiences is that I always only refer vendors that I use myself, or that I have clients that have used and in a successful manner. So I know that it are people that are trustworthy. And the other thing that I do to make sure is that the vendors that we refer to our clients are good is that we leverage the firm a little bit, so they become vendors of the firm, and in order for them to continue being vendors of the firm, they have to do a good job.
Mm-hmm.
And so that usually creates the ability to make sure and track the progress, track the work, make sure that the clients are being treated in a fair manner and they're getting what they paid for. Because building that network for the clients is one of the things that we have pride ourselves for a long time. I probably in the next, for 2025, one of the things that we're going to be doing is just posting our vendors in our website. Our website gets a lot of traffic. And so we're going to be posting the people that we recommend there, so that clients can pick and choose.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes from, as I said, architects, engineers, inspectors, appliances, cars, people, everything that you can think of, because I know that's important, that people don't have to lose when they start coming into the country, and it's the first time that they're doing business. But and when I was in the early part of my career, that's what I saw. I saw a lot of people that trusted developers that did not have experience, or vendors that clearly did not have the profile to build a house of a certain size. And those things now become obvious, but for the person that doesn't know much about the country, it's not.
Yeah, I've heard so many horror stories. I've been traveling, living, and doing business throughout Latin America for like 18 years, since I was right out of college, basically. I've heard so many horror stories about guys sending 150, 200, $250,000 to Latin America to deposit on a house, and then the guy just disappears and he's gone, never sees him again. So it's important, vitally important, to have those people that you can trust. And to that point, in Costa Rica, how do you handle those transactions? How can you safely transfer funds from the U.S. to Latin America?
Yeah. First of all, I think one of the things that has that is like the main characteristic of our firm is that our process is standardized. So it does not matter. We're 12 people in the real estate department, attorneys and paralegals, and it does not matter who you work with. We always follow the same process. We're not going to break it. We're not going to change it. Whether you're buying a small lot or you're buying a huge piece of property to do a development, we don't, because the idea of having things standardized is that it becomes easy for us to process volume in transactions without making mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
but more importantly, so that we always know what are the things that need to be explained to the clients, so that they know where they are. I tell them all the time, listen, you don't need to know everything, but you need to know the key points of buying real estate, so that you don't get lost in the whole process. And one of those things is wiring money. We always advise clients to use an escrow company that we will recommend. So depending on where the seller needs the money, or where the key aspects of the transaction are located, then we'll recommend the clients one escrow company or another escrow company in Costa Rica or in the United States, so that at all times the escrow company receives the money and protects the money and is the only one handling payouts for the clients. I think one of the biggest things that scare people is fraud, banking fraud, and identity theft. And so we have moved from maybe using Costa Rican escrow companies that were small to using bigger escrow companies that have secure folders, secure access protocols, and things like that. So that at all times, clients are either talking to us directly or talking to a representative through the secure channels. So nowadays, wires are done either to a domestic account in the United States or to an account in Costa Rica, an international wire, but everything has to go through an escrow company, so that at all times there's somebody telling clients, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to watch for. And sometimes we got to talk to people at their banks, because maybe they work with a small bank in a town and maybe they don't have the experience wiring out money internationally. So we just want to make sure that everybody, the banker, the client, the escrow company, everybody's connected. And we always make sure that it's a company that we have trusted for many years and used in many transactions, and we always operate under their secure channels. That is now the rule, versus a few years ago when everything was done via email and created a big chance of mistake.
It's nice hearing that you guys have actual escrow companies, because that's not always a thing in Latin America, right? I mean, there's so many countries. And then even nicer to hear that you have the option of using U.S. Escrow companies if they're not comfortable using a Costa Rica one, I guess, because that's the first time I've heard that.
Yeah, the practice definitely of using escrow company came from the States in the late 1990s. That's not something that we had as from a Costa Rican financial or legal institute. So this is something that was brought by some companies that decided to come and operate in Costa Rica in the late 1990s and early 2000s. And the good thing is that it stuck. Those companies were able to find a niche here in the market, in the real estate market, and have been very, very successful for a couple of decades now, providing services to Costa Ricans as well as foreigners in Canada, United States, and in any other place in the world. And that's something that I like. Normally when you're doing this type of transaction, you want to make sure that at all times the clients are protected and the money is protected, and that institute that was imported from the United States actually has influenced the growth of the market, because when people buy, they feel more comfortable when they know that there's a little similar thing when they buy property in their home countries.
Absolutely. Speaking of that, are there mortgages available for foreign buyers, or is it all cash?
So this is an interesting question. Maybe 2 years ago, I would have just said no, and there's nothing else to discuss. But nowadays, because of how much money is moved in the real estate market in Costa Rica, I think that maybe 2.5 years ago, banks and private banks, I mean, in Costa Rica started to create programs where they could, provide mortgage and financing services to foreigners.
Do you need reliable shipping across Latin America and the Caribbean? CaribbeanShipper.com specializes in delivering from the U.S. straight to your door in Colombia, Panama, and Argentina. And yes, they also serve the Caribbean, from Turks and Caicos all the way down to Trinidad. Right now, they're rapidly expanding in Medellin, Colombia, and quickly growing their presence in Panama and Argentina. With door-to-door tracking, insured shipments, and seamless customs handling, they've got your shipping needs covered. So whether you're a digital nomad, a retiree, or a business scaling internationally, Caribbean Shipper is your trusted partner. From consolidating online orders to shipping full container loads, they ensure your packages arrive safely. So register today at CaribbeanShipper.com/register and let them take care of your shipping needs throughout Latin America and the Caribbean.
I would say that maybe the first 6 months or 1 year of those plans that the banks enacted, you didn't see much success on people applying for loans because I think even banks were a little unsure on how they should handle the process, the documents, how to attest that the information that I'm receiving for somebody is secure. But that has changed,
Mhm.
and now foreigners can come to the country, and they can ask for a loan with three or four private banks. And I think that the success rate depends on the type of property that actually the clients are buying, because at this point, because the programs are so new, banks are focusing on making sure that it's in projects that they know, that have a good reputation, that are that have the key conditions, so that if they're stuck with a property, they can move it right away and they can have access of liquidity. So yes, people now come here and say, I want to put a property under contract, and they go to the bank like any Costa Rican would do, and maybe 2 3 months after that they'll get a loan. The only thing that anybody, either Costa Ricans or foreigners, have to consider is that the normal time frame for a real estate transaction in Costa Rica is about 30 days, right? So when you are going to be applying for a loan, that you're going to need 2 or 3 months to get it done.
Mhm.
So maybe not all sellers are going to be happy to wait that amount of time while somebody gets a loan, but if you find a property in a seller that is willing to wait for you to get the loan, it's fair game. And I think that has been a very big thing that has been changing the market. And I think that banks are just going to start doing that more and more in the near future.
In terms of locals buying real estate in Costa Rica, is the majority of the ownership in cash? Or what percentage of the ownership's in cash and what percentage is in loan?
Well, when it's Costa Rican, I'd say that 90% of the people buy
In cash?
through bank
Go
financing.
through bank. Okay.
And if I have to say how that number changes with foreigners, I'll say that 95 out of 100 loans right now are done in cash for foreigners, and little by little, you're seeing more and more people look for bank financing. But in Costa Rica, because there's a very big middle class, and they're public banks that have to support housing and for Costa Ricans, then most of the people do buy with a mortgage.
And what are the interest rates looking like on those? The banks that
Well,
will.
banks are now probably at a base of 8.25, 8.75% for maybe 2 to 4 years, and then it's going to go up to maybe 10, 11, 12%, depending on the program the bank has, the type of property. One of the things that I have been seeing is that the banking conditions, especially for foreigners, change depending on the project. So they'll give you much better conditions if you buy at a place that it's a very well-known development that they feel comfortable lending. So there's a lot of things that are factoring in right now when you're applying for a loan. I guess the good part is that now you can apply for a loan. As I said, you asked me 2 years ago, and I would have said no. There's no financing for foreigners.
Mhm. And are most foreigners that come down to Costa Rica and purchase, are they purchasing lifestyle buys for them to live in and use, or are they looking more at the investment side? Maybe they're going to come down for 3 months a year and then rent it the other nine, or what are you seeing there?
Yeah, I think most of the people that come and buy real estate in Costa Rica are probably within that profile that you mentioned. People that are going to be coming here for a few months a year, and then they're either going to have to leave the property unattended, or they're going to be renting the property. So I think there's always a good idea, the to use investment as a key parameter to come and buy property.
Hmm.
If one of the things that I have learned a lot is that, for example, the Ticos, the Costa Ricans, we don't have a culture of investment because the country sometimes is so small that the options are limited.
Hmm.
But it's not the same with U.S. Investors. The investment culture in the United States is a lot higher and bigger than it is in Costa Rica. So when people come, they want to make sure that they're buying something that can produce some income if they're not using it, right? And so that's that type of residential property that has the ability to be rented during the high seasons here is what most of the people are looking for nowadays.
And in the high seasons, you would say that it's pretty easy to pop that property up on Airbnb or.
I would say so. I would say so. I guess everything, sales are always good depending the channels that you have to advertise, right? So if you have great pictures and you have somebody that knows what they're doing in social media and you have somebody that knows how to manage the platforms, those properties tend to do great. But if you're like me, that you're not so great with technology, then it's a little bit more difficult for me to be able to do it. But I think that the biggest trait of success for people that rent is those that use property managers that have the experience to do that. And this is one of the things that I always tell clients, and it is they tell me, "Hey, how do you think the rental is going to go in this property?" And I always say, "Well, it depends on what property manager you're going to be using."
Mm-hmm.
Because the billing schemes by property manager, obviously they want to keep the property maintained, and that's a big factor of why you choose someone.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other one is going to be if you can turn this asset into a producing income asset, right? And that depends on the mindset that the property manager has. If it's a property manager that is super knowledgeable and focused on making a profit on their side based on growing the rental business for their clients, they're going to do good. But if it's a property manager that it's going to be renting out of luck, when somebody occasionally visits their website or visits their social media, then it's going to be harder for you to turn a profit. So it's always about making sure you choose the right property manager if you're not going to be doing it yourself. And I always give again a list of property managers that they can interview. I always tell people, listen, you got to ask them, what's your plan? What's going to be your plan to market my property so that I can turn a profit when I'm renting? What are comparables that you have on properties similar than me? What have they done? And look for that information and not be passive and just, say, okay, they're going to take care of my property. I'm fine with that.
And
I guess, yeah.
sorry about that. To that point is, I want to talk. Are a lot of those guys using Airbnb and Booking and all those other platforms?
Yes, most of owners and property managers, they will go through the apps. And they'll go with VRBO, Airbnb, bookings, hotels, all that stuff that has been open now, so that you can put your rental property as well. Same with hotels, right? So from that perspective, that is the main channel that people are booking right now. I think that the ones that are really, really strong at advertising property for rentals, they're going to have a web page and they're going to be investing in what they can do with the SEO and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not everybody. So you'll see a lot of people going through the platforms, and maybe the people that are really, really good are going to create a website for their property and market in a more specific way. But yes, the platforms are the way to go.
And what are the tax responsibilities in Costa Rica for rental properties?
Okay, for rental properties, so the government a few years ago, 2019, they created, there was a big tax reform in the country. And one of the things that the government wanted to tax was rental income. Why? Because people in general did not rent and rent, but did not pay taxes. I'm sorry, and so the government started to create a bit more regulations so that the huge rental market was created, especially in the coast and for the Costa Ricans that do that, nobody was paying taxes. So they created what they did is that they created two regimes that you can pay your taxes. One is the straight up income tax regime that, for example, is the same one that I, as a lawyer, would be subject to, or anybody that runs a business, and you pay taxes depending on income, on on tiers and brackets, depending on how much money you're bringing in. To be in the normal income tax system, you have to have at least one employee, right? So for many people that have a house and they're just doing rentals and they don't spend much time here, that can be cumbersome to keep an employee just for doing little things here and there on their property was not attractive. So the government created a special regime. And that special regime allowed people to pay income tax at a rate of 12.5% over the income without having to present deductibles. And the reason they were thinking about that is because in Costa Rica, there's a lot of people that maybe they have a small house, and ticos, I'm talking about Costa Ricans, that had a small house, had an apartment, and it was just going to make it unfeasible for them to continue renting under the income tax regime. So the government gave that option to people that have, smaller rentals. And now it's something that most of the expats that own property in Costa Rica are using. It's what it's called the 85-15 regime, in which you get 15% deductibles without necessarily having to account for the expense, and you pay taxes on the remaining 85. So that's what people are doing.
So you'd pay 12.5 off of the remaining 85.
Exactly.
Okay. Wow.
So it's a good tax rate. And then the clients always tell me, and what is going to be more beneficial for me? And I tell them, well, you have to run your expenses, and if your expenses start to accrue past 15% in a way that you can offset income and it makes sense to you financially, then you move to the other regime. But in reality, that's mostly going to apply to bigger properties, right? Properties that are going to be generating significant income and that have significant expenses that are going to go past the 15%, so that it makes sense. But so everybody starts on the simplified regime, and probably the bigger houses, they're going to move eventually to a traditional income tax because of the structure.
And what about capital gains? So once you sell the property, what are your
Yeah,
responsibilities?
capital gains, it's been something interesting because I know that when I talk about capital gains with my foreign clients, they're like used to it, and they're scared of that and they don't like it, but they're used to it. In Costa Rica, it actually started to in 2019. So capital gains, the typical investor will come to Costa Rica. They're super excited because there's no capital gains tax, so they don't have to worry about that. And since 2019, that is something that actually we all have to consider. Costa Ricans, same as foreigners. Capital gains, the general rule is that you're going to be paying 15%, 15% of the gain, right? So that's like the general rule. The way that it will work is, I will use my acquisition value plus the expenses plus the improvements, and I will subtract that from my sales price, right? Whatever's the difference, I will pay 15%. First of all, I always hear from my clients that that's such a much better rate than they would have to pay in their country. So they feel a little bit better about the 15% capital gains rate. But then there are other options. For example, there is something that I always try to create the conditions for clients to be in. That is the capital gains tax exemption. And it is the ability to not pay capital gain on sale if you prove that it is your primary residency, right? So normally the two ways to be able to get that exemption are to either become a Costa Rican resident, which is paperwork that needs to be filed before the tax directorate, and it's mostly time, and then getting a fiscal residency in the country. That is when you spend more than 6 months of a year in the calendar fiscal year. Either of those options is going to allow you to not pay capital gains.
Oh, you pay zero.
Um, Pay zero. So that's more. And some clients, whenever they're coming to Costa Rica, they'll say, okay, how difficult it is to get the investor residency that will accept me from capital gains. Well, it's not really difficult. It takes time, which is not the same. But so a lot of people just apply from day one when they are buying the property so that they can have their residency. And if they sell, it's going to imply a significant savings from the tax.
So it totally makes sense to get the residency if you're going to be buying property because you're saving
Yeah.
15%. And so let's
Yes.
say
Yes.
on
Yes.
that person that doesn't get the residency, doesn't have the capital gains exemption. Um, let's say he flips his house, right, and he's obligated to 15% cap gains. Does he have, like in the U.S. we have what's called the 1031 exchange? If you, and it depends on the state how much time they give you, but let's just say as an example, a lot of states will give you 6 months. So some are 2 months, some are, it's all different. But anyway, so if you sell your house and you make money on it, as long as you reinvest that in an equal or more valuable property, then you don't have to pay cap gains on that property because you've reinvested it. Do
Mhm.
they have anything like that in Costa Rica?
No, but I have worked with several clients that sell their Costa Rican property and then they apply it to a 1031 exchange.
Okay.
And they get the benefit, maybe not from the Costa Rican side, but on the U.S. side. So
Okay.
we have been working with several clients that say, "Hey, I need to do this to a 1031 exchange. You know what it is?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we have set it up." So we have a connection with an escrow company that is an authorized provider of that specific service in the United States, and we channeled that through that company so that clients can actually take advantage of their 1031 exchange. Yeah.
Gotcha. So, hey, that all this said, what advice would you give a new investor coming to Costa Rica for the first time?
Well, first of all, I think there are three golden rules. Number one is um, you have to work with a real estate agent. It's important that you look for a qualified real estate agent because they're going to have access to a lot of information. They're going to have access to comparables. They're going to have knowledge of the market. A lot of real estate agents, specialize on specific sectors of the country. So that has to be your starting point. Then second, you have to work with qualified attorney or real estate firm to get your legal services. It's very different from somebody that and I can say it very openly that yeah, anybody can do a title purchase in Costa Rica. There's 35,000 attorneys here, and anybody can do it. But there's a huge difference between somebody that does it 3 times a year and somebody that does it 200 times a year, like we do.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of information, data, and knowledge process that goes with that. So you need to get an attorney that knows how to structure your invest vehicle, how to run the due diligence, how to set you up with an escrow, and to make it easy once you buy. And that is something like like every specialty that may exist in any field. The more specialized you are, that it easier it is, and the better results you tend to get.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say always work with an escrow company. And when they tell me what's the explanation on that, and I touched a little bit on that previously, but you know how easy it is to give money to someone, but then getting it back not so much.
Yeah.
That's exactly why you need to work with an escrow company, because there's a lot of people, and especially when you deal with Costa Ricans were not used to or are not used to dealing with escrow companies. So when they find a foreigner, they would say, "Oh no, wire money to my account," and they'll just wire money, and then getting that money back is not that easy. You have to go through the courts if they don't want to return it. So for me, those are the three key things: work with a real estate agent, get a qualified attorney, and always work through an escrow company. Because otherwise, you're setting yourself. I don't know if for failure, but clearly you're not maximizing your chance of success, and I think that's what it's all about.
Every time that I've done, and I know I'm kind of repeating a little bit about what we talked about earlier, but every time that I have tried to skimp out in Latin America and pay less money because I'm in Latin America, or I've just gone to the first person that I liked because he was charismatic or whatever, and anytime I've tried to go those routes, I've been screwed over. And I think your point is worth gold for sure. Make sure you go to qualified people. In Costa Rica, is there a license required for real estate agents?
That's a good question, and the short answer is no, there's not. So anybody can be the real estate agent that day. That's why I always say, hey, the cab driver is probably going to try to sell you something. He's going to know somebody with a property.
Yep.
But there is, but there's a license that is like an authorization to operate in the market that comes from the financial regulator, but that's not really a license. They don't measure technical knowledge like it is in the U.S., where it's actually tough. You have to pass an exam, and it's not that easy, and it's actually a privilege to be able to have that license. It's not the same here,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So, but it's very easy for me sometimes to know who knows their stuff and who doesn't. And I always tell clients, ask questions.
Well,
They cannot give you comps if they don't have listings. If they don't have information, they probably don't do it professionally.
well, I asked that question because again, Americans, a lot of times I've seen them come down to other countries in Latin America, and I'm repeating myself again, but there's no license required. So everyone, like you said, the taxi, all the way to the taxi drivers, all of a sudden a real estate agent. And if you open up the minute you get here and say, hey, I'm looking to buy a property in Tamarindo, well, everyone has a real estate agent that they all of a sudden know, or they're a real estate agent in Tamarindo. And then, you end up getting screwed. So if you don't go through the right channels, it's going to cost you in the end. So I think when it comes to immigration, moving money around, all of those things, to me, it's always been worth paying more um, to get the more qualified service because again, I've lost a lot of money personally um, trying to save money.
Yeah, absolutely,
So
absolutely, absolutely. You know, it's most. I would say that most of my clients, they do listen in that sense and in that regard. But I think it all, you know, it starts with the real estate agent for the most part. You know, real estate agents are going to be the first, probably I would always say the first person an investor meets is the real estate agent. The second is going to be the lawyer, right? And normally that lawyer is going to be a referral from the real estate agent. So if it's somebody that's you know, that has a good practice, they're probably going to refer you to a few firms that are going to do a good job for you. But it starts there. It starts there. And I also agree with you that sometimes saving money on legal advice or real estate advice can be tricky. Um, and that's why, you know, I always tell clients, listen, due diligence is going to be the best investment that you're going to be doing. Here in Costa Rica, we don't operate with a title company. So the title company in the States is going to assess the title, is going to assess the marketability of the title, is going to look for liens, debt, is going to settle the numbers. That's not going to happen. So the lawyer is going to be doing that. He's going to be running the show. So if you have somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, you're stuck with a problem. And so that's where it starts. You know, normally the referral from the real estate agent, they're going to be referring you where to eat, you know, where are the best places to visit, and which is the lawyer you should go to. And I think that that creates basically sets up everything going forward. Yeah, so we will always try to share as much information on our website because that, you know, we there's so much people don't know that we just want to put it there because it helps. It just helps.
speaking of that, well, number one, I want to say thank you so much. I think this information was incredible. So thank you so much for coming today.
Welcome.
I really really enjoyed the conversation. How do people get in touch with you and your company?
Well, my company's name is Quatro Legal. Our website is Legal. It's fairly straightforward. Cuatro with a Q. And if you type that in Google, it's going to appear. Also, my email is going to be grb@cuatro.legal. And I am super responsive. So you
You
send
are.
me a text, you send me a message, you give me a call, we'll respond. I have a big team. You know, we started in 2015, 4 people. Now it's over 40. So what my teams tells me all the time is my job is not to be getting too much involved with day-to-day stuff, but make sure that people are being tended to, that when people call, they get a call back from me. And I'm super hands-on in that perspective. So yeah, you can write me an email, you can send me a text, you can go through our website and go through our social media, and that will get to me and I will get back. So it's always a good way to do it.
Um, to your point about being responsive, I think that's another thing it's worth its weight in gold, especially to Americans and Canadians that I know value responsiveness and people getting back to them. That's another thing that I find that foreigners have a lot of problems with in Latin America is people won't get back to them. They take days off. They won't let them know that they take a lot of days off and they won't let them know that, hey, I'll get back to you in 3 weeks. They just don't answer and they just disappear and you think they're just gone, right? So when you find a business in Latin America that's responsive, calls you back, texts you back, to me, it's always been worth its weight in gold because, it's growing up in the U.S. That's just something that's expected and very highly valued. So I appreciate you coming on again, and we'll be in touch.
Absolutely, happy to be here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us on the Matt Chambers Show. I'm your host, Matt Chambers. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show to help others discover it. Until next time, keep traveling, keep doing business, and keep living beyond borders. See you soon.